Hi, I'm not here to speak about Proposal 1, but I do want to say, this is going to cause me to be shunned, I'm sure, that I voted for it because I've had people live with me who needed a home. I had a homeless student live with me for almost a year, and I had a person with 2 little children who had a terrible family situation move in for quite a little bit of time, like 8 months. The whole time I was like, I'm trying to do the right thing here, but I don't know what the city is going to think of this. None of my neighbors cared, so I don't care either. But I think people should be allowed to help other people like Liz is helping this artist person. Now, to turn to what I'm really talking about, and that is noise, noisy cars. I want to say something preliminary, which is in the work against Proposal 1 subsequent to its passage, I felt like, first of all, I don't regard students as not residents of East Lansing. But I felt like people were just like, we don't care. This is what happened, but we think we know better, and we're going to do something about it. And I feel like the same thing happened with this noisy car ordinance. I don't know how many people live downtown or close to downtown like I do in Glencairn, but I can tell you that the noise from cars has greatly increased now because there are no enforcement tools. There were some disingenuous suggestions made that we should regulate all noise, which I certainly agree with, but daytime noise is qualitatively different than nighttime noise. And another thing that really bothers me about the noisy cars is that they go right by schools where there are little children who are listening to outside, playing or whatever, and these cars are really, really loud. And there are several schools that are located on streets where these cars pass routinely, also during the day. So where I live now, basically, starting at about 1 a.m. till about 3 is like living in the middle of a racetrack. And I'm sure there are a lot of other people who feel the same way in East Lansing or close to major streets like I am, or on major streets. By passing the ordinance, I felt like people were just virtue signaling. And that's a very insulting thing to say, and I don't mean to insult people. But Ann Arbor passed this, and then we're going to be as good as Ann Arbor. But whole states that are considered pretty reasonable places to live have discovered that noise is a very serious public health problem. And when we passed the ordinance, I realized that it was in part because of enforcement mechanisms were not readily available. However, by passing the ordinance, the whole process of looking, unless I'm wrong, which I would be delighted to be, the whole process of continuing to examine enforcement mechanisms is short-circuited. It would have been much better not to pass the ordinance, but to simply put it in abeyance until a valid enforcement mechanism could be located that was not subject to individual interpretation. And I totally get that that is the goal, and it's a right goal, and it should be the goal. But the technology, because of this international problem of very noisy cars, and because whole states are now enforcing quite seriously noise with huge fines, is moving very rapidly. And I would like an assurance from council that if in fact the reason that it was not passed was because enforcement mechanisms that would reduce bias were not available, that the research will continue, and when enforcement mechanisms are available, that the council will reconsider. Because I think that the ultimate result, and I've talked to my students about this, and they hate these cars just as much as I do. Sometimes I can't even teach, it's so loud. But the point is, it's making the center of East Lansing unlivable. Unless I have had students tell me that they have moved because they felt like they were next to a car show at night. And we need to be protected. So the people who are so up in arms about Proposal 1, what about the livability of the general environment of the center of East Lansing? I think that is just as much in question, if not more in question, from this noise.
30 seconds remaining.
All right, I'm going to come back because I believe that the most people in East Lansing would like these cars to be enforced in a non-biased way against noise. So when I'm going to keep an eye on the enforcement mechanisms myself, and I think council should be aware that ignoring valid citizen interests and where they live can lead to results like Proposal 1.